So, two examples there of communities in Latin America suffering from water contamination, and it's a global problem. The UN estimates that 1 in 9 people across the world don't have access to clean drinking water. And up to 400 million tons of waste is dumped into water every year. And that's about 1.5 times the total amount of garbage produced in the United States each year. Water is a highly sought after resource. Nearly 3/4 of all the world's fresh water is consumed by industry. Let's get more on this with Joel Reynolds. He's a senior attorney and Western director for the Natural Resources Defense Council. He joins us now from Los Angeles. Thanks so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Glad to be here.
So, Joel, you heard about the situations in Mexico and Peru. Is the mining industry in that region doing enough to protect the environment, and what more can it do?
I think the answer is clearly no, because we've just seen over the last several weeks what's been characterized as probably the worst environmental disaster in Mexico's history. So that, I think, is graphic evidence of the fact that they're not doing things the way that need to be done. The fact of the matter is that mining is one of the most wasteful and destructive activities that humans engage in. It is a dangerous business inherently, and in order to do it correctly, a lot of measures need to be in place that historically have not been. And that's the reason that mining disasters like the one we've just heard about in Mexico have occurred consistently over the last 50 to 60 years.
So how would you characterize the mining industry in South America compared to their counterparts, say, here in the United States or in Canada? Do they down there face more or less regulation and opposition?
You know, mining is actually a global industry. A lot of the mining companies that operate down in South America actually aren't from there, and the same is true in the United States or any other country. The fact of the matter is, even in countries like the United States that are renowned for having a fairly evolved system of environmental protection, even in countries like that, we have significant problems, significant challenges with the mining industry. So Peru, whether it's Peru or Chile or the United States or China, pick your country, there has been a history of contamination of water as a result of mining activities. And it doesn't matter which country you're in, we need to do a lot better job. And I think it's in the industry's own interest to do so.
Well, Joel, I want you to pick your country. Is there a country in the world that is doing it right or doing it better than others?
I would say there is no country in the world that's doing it right. The mining industry has generated literally hundreds of significant containment failures over the last 50 years or so. And we've seen just in the last month the worst environmental disaster in the history of British Columbia. We just heard about the worst environmental disaster in Mexico's history. Up in British Columbia, it was the Mount Poly mine, where some 15 million 50 million cubic meters of mine tailings spilled into pristine streams and lakes in the Fraser River watershed. In the United States, in Alaska, we're fighting what would be the largest copper and gold mine, literally in the headwaters of the greatest wild salmon fishery in the world, and that's in Bristol Bay, a mine called the Pebble Mine. So those are examples of mining activities, even in countries with fairly advanced environmental regulation structures for the industry, and the problems are still enormous.
So, Joel, where do we start if this problem is so large? Where do you begin? Can technology play a part in this?
Certainly technology can play a part in this. I mean, recycling, dehydration of tailings, waste minimization. These are all examples of how technology can improve the performance of this industry. But the fact of the matter is there's no more important factor than siting. Because if you site a mine in areas where the water table is high or in close proximity to water, eventually you're going to have a problem with containment and contamination. That's been the history of this industry. So we need to do more from the perspective of technology, but we have to recognize that engineering is not going to solve this problem. If we're not willing to make sensible decisions on where mines should be sited and where mines should not be sited. And then finally, I think it's very important to recognize the right and the interest of the public in understanding what's going on. The industry needs to be more transparent, it needs to be more responsive, and governments and regulators need to do their job.
All right, Joel Reynolds, Western Director, Senior Attorney, Natural Resources Defense Counsel, thank you so much for joining us from Los Angeles.